in relation to the $1 billion sale of BC Rail. The Crown prosecutor was laying out its case to show that Bobby Verk and Dave Bassey received thousands of dollars in cash, tickets for them and their wives to see a Denver Broncos NFL game, restaurant meals costing some $20,000, and job opportunities in exchange for confidential documents. The Crown alleges Bassey and Verk passed that information to a Victoria-based lobbyist working for one of three bidders vying for BC Rail. Bobby Verk's lawyer objected in the middle of the statement, prompting the judge to issue a warning that defense would be removed from the court if it interrupted again. The Crown also told jurors they will view a large volume of documents, hear recorded telephone calls, and hear from about 30 witnesses.
Today, the opening address by Mr. Berardino helped put some of it in context and give us a bit of a timeline now. So it'll be interesting to follow it, and then, of course, to see what defense does with it, particularly during cross-examination of these various witnesses.
The criminal investigation resulted in a raid of the BC legislature in December 2003. At the time, Dave Bassey worked for then Finance Minister Gary Collins. Verk was employed in the office of then Transportation Minister Judith Reid. The Crown also said today a third former government employee, Anil Bassey, allegedly moved regular payments from the lobbyist through his bank account to that of his cousin, Dave Bassey. The trial continues in Vancouver tomorrow.
How are you feeling this morning? Good, thank you very much.
Money, free meals, even an all-expenses-paid trip to Denver for an NFL game. Perks the prosecution alleges Dave Bassey and Bobby Verk got for peddling confidential inside information on the sale of BC Rail. The former ministerial assistants are facing several charges of fraud and breach of trust. Bassey's cousin Anil is accused of money laundering. In his opening address, prosecutor Bill Berardino told the jury $27,000 worth of checks from a government lobbyist were written to Anil Bassey, who passed on $25,000 to his cousin Dave. Berardino also alleged lobby firm Pilot House Communications spent $20,000 on lavish meals for Bassey and Verk. Pilot House was acting for a U.S. railway that was bidding for BC Rail. Berardino told court this man, Pilot House co-owner Eric Bornman, will likely testify Bassey and Verk gave sensitive and confidential information to Pilot House relating to the BC Rail bidding process.
I expect this will be a very contentious trial. This will be a good public theater, but from my perspective, as I said yesterday, the most important thing for me is that the public finds out exactly what happened with the sale of their railway.
During the Crown's opening, Verk's lawyer, Kevin McCullough, twice interrupted the prosecutor, objecting to what was being said. Madam Justice Anne McKenzie threatened to eject him from the court if he didn't stop. He did.
McCullough, you seem very agitated during the opening remarks there. Can you explain why?
I don't think it's appropriate for me to comment.
The first witness to be called, Premier Campbell's Chief of Staff, Martin Brown, but he was only on the stand for a few minutes before the trial adjourned for the day. He'll be back tomorrow. Mike Killeen, CTV News, Vancouver.
7 years after the raid on the legislature today, a jury began hearing evidence against three former government employees. Dave Bassey, Bob Verk, and Anil Bassey are facing charges of fraud, breach of trust, and money laundering. As John Daly reports, the Crown hadn't even made it through opening statements when the judge was threatening to throw out the defense lawyer.
Dave Bassey, pleading not guilty, comes to court for the real start of statements and evidence in the BC Rail corruption trial.
How are you feeling this morning? Oh, good, thank you very much.
Dave Bassey was the ministerial assistant to Finance Minister Gary Collins. Bassey's co-accused, Bob Verk, was the ministerial assistant to Transport Minister Judith Reid. Special Prosecutor Bill Berardino finally opened his case, telling the jury evidence will show Pilot House was the lobbying firm working for Omnitrax, a bidder to buy BC Rail. But when Berardino mentioned Bruce Clark, who was representing the Washington Group, a bidder, Kevin McCullough, Bob Verk's lawyer, jumped up to object. Madam Justice Anne McKenzie told McCullough, "You will remain seated or you will be removed from the court by the sheriffs." Berardino continued, but was cut off again by McCullough. "If you interrupt again, you will be removed from court." Berardino then told the jury that Eric Bornman, a principal of Pilot House, will testify, and that Bornman is testifying under immunity. That evidence will show he made regular money payments to Mr. David Bassey. Dave Bassey instructed him to make checks payable to Anil Bassey, David's cousin. O'Neill deposited regular checks into Dave Bassey's account. That the evidence will show $25,000 in regular payments flow from Bornman's company through O'Neill to Dave Bassey. That Bassey came to the offices of Pilot House and gave Bornman actual bid numbers. That Brian Kiernan, another principal of Pilot House, will testify Dave Bassey demanded $3,000 for airfare to Denver for a trip to watch an NFL game with one of the bidders, and that Bassey enjoyed regular dinners where there was discussion of confidential information, dinners worth an alleged total of $20,000. With that, Premier Campbell's Chief of Staff, Martin Brown, became the first witness in the BC Rail corruption trial, testifying about the oaths of confidentiality ministerial aides must swear.
All right, so as mentioned, it has been almost 7 years since all of this got started, so there's likely a number of people involved here that you may not remember. Keith Baldry now with a review of the key players involved, including who's been called to testify and how this scandal may or may not affect the Liberal government going forward.
I, Gordon Campbell.
I, Gordon Campbell.
Do swear that I will be faithful.
Do swear that I will be faithful.
The BC Liberals were all smiles after their historic election win in 2001. Ready to govern, ready for new policies. One of those policies, however, was a complete reversal of what they said they would do. They privatized BC Rail, and that very sale has enmeshed all kinds of political personalities from a number of levels. The tangled web starts with two key aides to cabinet ministers, Bob Verk and Dave Bassey. Both were major political players in that government. Verk worked for the minister overseeing the sale of BC Rail, then Transportation Minister Judith Reid, who found herself answering questions about him soon after the raid on the legislature.
The Solicitor General I talked to on Monday and told me that I wouldn't be told anything and that this was a police investigation.
Dave Bassey worked for this man, then Finance Minister Gary Collins. At the time, it was reported there was tension between them and the Premier's office, which was perceived to be favoring CN Rail to be the successful bidder for BC Rail. A key person in the Premier's office is this man, Martin Brown, then and now the Chief of Staff to Premier Gordon Campbell, and the man who actually hired Bassey and Verk as ministerial aides. And during the bidding process, Northern Liberal MLAs, notably Pat Bell, then a backbencher, now the Forest Minister, fought to ensure a better deal for their towns from whoever bought the railway. But Bassey and Verk had other political connections as well, namely to the Federal Liberal Party. They were main organizers for Paul Martin in his bid for the party leadership, and in so doing came in close contact with top BC Federal Liberal organizer Mark Marison, who at the time was married to yet another BC cabinet minister, Christy Clark. Her brother Bruce, another lobbyist, was also involved in the bidding process for BC Rail. And this is where this man comes in, Eric Bornman, another top federal Liberal organizer in BC. He also worked as a lobbyist, and one of his clients was Omnitrax, which was also bidding for BC Rail. He met and talked with Dave Bassey and Bob Verk numerous times. It is Eric Bornman's allegations of leaks, payoffs, and bribes that are at the heart of the Crown's case, allegations that have been vociferously denied by both Bassey and Verk. The events this trial will deal with allegedly occurred almost 7 years ago. Most of the players from back then are long gone from the political scene, but they are coming back into the public eye, and the ride during this trial may prove to be a bit uncomfortable.
And one of the people that Keith just spoke about, Premier Campbell's Chief of Staff, Martin Brown, is expected to face rigorous cross-examination when the trial continues tomorrow.